always, negotiation starts with thinking about what are the problems I want to solve, or what are the problems I'm already solving in the world? And how do I communicate that in a meaningful and tangible way so that I can advance the cause?
Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator. Today, we're going to be talking about negotiation. We're going to discuss everything from conflict resolution to getting better deals and how you can feel empowered to advocate for more for yourself in the workplace with our special guest, Alexandra Carter. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Seth. Thanks so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
I have too. Thank you. And you're very, very welcome. To our audience, thanks for joining us today. We're excited that you've come back. For first timers, thanks for taking your time to join with us. This is going to be a great conversation, and I'm sure we're going to get not only a lot of practical tips, but really some inspiration and some mindset ideas about, how to kind of frame all things negotiation and, how to really be a better advocate for yourself. So if you enjoy this, please subscribe, love, like, share, repost, bring it on. We want it all, and we love you for being here. But first things first, Alexandra, you know this already. I just want to share with our audience, you're an award-winning negotiating trainer. You're a clinical professor at Columbia Law School. Your TEDx talk on how to ask for more and get it has reached over 1 million viewers. So congratulations on that. I want to start by getting your take, your sense, your thoughts on what needs to happen in our thinking, a shift, if you will, to make us better advocates for ourselves.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have, an outdated view of what negotiation is because that's what we've been taught. Even I attended some very fine institutions where I was taught that negotiation is basically when you haggle with another person to get to a deal that you put on paper. And what that meant for me was I thought, well, I don't do this very much, right? I thought negotiation was something you did only when the circumstances kind of forced it upon you a few times a year when you were getting ready to sign a deal. And the other thing that did to me is when you're thinking of it as a battle or as haggling, it feels less appealing. And so sometimes we just count ourselves out entirely. And I think, Seth, that's why recent research shows most of us, more than 50% of us, did not negotiate our last salary, right? And when we do negotiate, we're not getting everything we possibly could. And so the first thing I want people to know is what I learned. If you want the full story about how my marriage almost went down in flames, but did not, you can watch my TEDx talk. But I learned on my honeymoon what negotiation actually is. And it's not haggling, and it's not just over money. It's simply how we steer our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're the type of person who people trust, if you're good with people, if you're good at creating connections, congratulations, you are and can be a really great negotiator. And also, when you think about negotiation just as steering the relationships in your life, you realize we're negotiating all the time. Yeah. This is what I do with my daughter every day when she comes home from school. It's the process, not just of haggling, but how do I think about partnering with my clients or the clients I haven't even yet met to solve their problems in the course of solving mine. And when we think about it from that more expansive viewpoint, we're more relaxed, we do it more, we can get more out of it.
Yeah, it is a more expansive view because the antiquated one or the outdated one, if you will, we'll call it last century at the very least, is it's zero sum, right? It's binary. There's a winner or a loser. It's antagonistic. There's tension. It's a struggle. And many people take themselves out of the game from the get-go,
Yeah, and it's actually pretty rare that you have a straight up win-lose situation in life. My daughter's a swimmer, and you'd think you've got 8 girls in a pool, everybody's trying to get to the end of the pool, that there's only one winner. Well, guess what? My daughter has swum in races where, technically speaking, she came in last. But
Hmm.
in the process of that, she achieved a personal best time that catapulted her toward her goals. Life is like that. Most of the time, it's not even an 8-lane pool, it's a wide open ocean. And it's just a matter of, Seth, how do I help get you to where you're going at the same
Yeah.
time that I get myself to where I'm going? And we might be going to totally different places.
Yeah. Alex, the last time I saw you speak in person and you took such great care of my client, I remember you wove that personal story in. And if I recall correctly, my memory has failed me. She came in last, but the reason why it was a personal best because she was in a category up or an age group up.
Yes.
And just being in that environment caused her to push, even though technically she came in last, it was a personal best.
That's exactly right. She was a 12-year-old swimming with 15, 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. And it taught me a lot about negotiation.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think, I don't have enough experience, right? Or I'm not as good as these other people.
Yeah.
Never count yourself out, because sometimes being in the room is what's going to help further you toward your goal, even as the other people are reaching for their goals.
The open water analogy is just, or metaphor is so beautiful that open water analogy. Here's my question. You hear win-win and it's words and it sounds nice and it's a win-win for everybody. Let's unpack that a little bit because my feeling is, whether it's literally in a sale or a negotiation for a contract, it's words. So you kind of make a declaration or you accept and acknowledge, I'm going to declare it a win, albeit something might have been exceeded, like seeded. You know what I'm saying? Can you say a little bit about that and how you bring your expertise into framing that up?
Yeah. So rather than win or lose, I like to just ask people, how does this help advance you toward your goals or not? And what I like to teach people to do is what I call a needs audit before they get into a conversation with somebody else. And what's a needs audit is where I'm sitting down, and this is actually set the first phase of negotiation. It's not when I sit down with you to say, okay, how are we going to work together for this client? It's me sitting down with myself and saying, what do I need? Right? What are the problems I'm trying to solve, in my career? And when I'm thinking about my needs, I write down everything that I might need, tangible or intangible, before this particular negotiation, right? So thinking about, if you're going in to negotiate a salary, right, you're thinking about first the tangibles, the things you can touch, see, or count, right? So it could be compensation, it could be title, it could be the budget or the resources you're going to get. And then you also really need to take count of the intangibles. Those are the values that drive us and that make our work life and our personal life worth living. So I might say, I like challenge. I like feeling as though I'm learning in every, engagement I do. I really value autonomy and collaboration. I want to feel like I'm working with somebody, not like I'm being spoken to. And once I have the results of my needs audit, which can only take a few minutes once you're used to doing this, then when I go in and we're talking together, I have a way to evaluate, is what Seth is talking about going to advance me toward my goals? It's a given that I want you to advance towards your goals,
Yeah.
because that's how we get to a long-term, mutually fruitful partnership. And
Yeah.
most negotiations, even if you think you're at the table with your quote unquote adversary, your adversary becomes your partner once that deal is done, right? So I'm thinking about, then I have a yardstick to look at everything. And I'm not thinking about, did I win or lose this point? Or did Seth win or lose this point? Did Seth advance toward his goals? And how much did I advance toward mine?
Yeah. As you're sharing that, what crosses my mind is emotional intelligence. And
Mm,
while we often still have an antiquated or an outdated view of negotiation. You're offering dare I say, a new paradigm or a modern one, but something that requires emotional intelligence, where an old model of thinking of what a win in negotiation or what you want to get versus, hey, look, I've audited it out, I've itemized, I've listed. These are absolute non-negotiables. These are ones that I can take under consideration, maybe make some accommodations on. It requires really connecting, looking in the mirror and saying, look, this is what's really important. It's not that it looks a certain way before I go in. And I don't know where I'm connecting the emotional intelligence with that, but it's somehow. Do you see what I'm saying? You're the professor here. Help me land the plane.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about is both with yourself, tuning out the noise of what other people think you should be going for or should be doing with your life. I think we've had long conversations about our career paths, and each of us got to where we are now because we were able to look in the mirror and say, what is it that I'm desiring for my life? What is it that most important to me? What kind of impact do I want to have? Not anybody else but me. And then I find, Seth, that the more I'm able to tune into myself
Yeah.
non-judgmentally and
Yeah.
understand what I need, the opposite is true. I'm then able to look at somebody else and try to understand, what do I think motivates them? What are the problems that are keeping them up at night? What are their goals? What do they need most? And then this way I can matchmake between what I'm offering and the problems they need solved.
No, that's a great distinction. And I think, I was calling it emotional intelligence, but it really is just being in tune with just getting that clarity. When I say simplify, I'm using the word simplify, not that these are simple things, but reducing it down to its core so
Yeah.
that there's not a lot of swirl and a lot of noise. That's maybe the emotional intelligence, or self-awareness might be the better language. I just want to pause here and just say this is really great for our listeners and our viewers. And if you love this kind of content, we're going to talk about your book in a moment. We're going to put that in the show notes. We're going to put your TED Talk in the show notes as well. But really, share with your community this episode, because this is great, rich information, and we want to continue to bring this type of content to you. And in our comments, comment on areas where you've had great success or where you still struggle in negotiation. Alex, I want to turn the corner a little bit. This might be a good way to dovetail into people you and I deal with a lot. I know you are a law professor, you're a mother, you're a wife, you're so many things. We're not just one thing, but you're also a keynote speaker. And we both deal regularly, intimately with meeting professionals, event marketers, event planners, conference planners. What would you share that could make a difference for event planners in the world of advocating for themselves or negotiating? It could be within their team to a direct report. It could be with catering and food and beverage, a hotel negotiation. Just love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I actually
Right.
just
As I
recently
finished my question, I was like, and only take like the next 9 days to do that, answer that question. I
I
mean,
know, I was thinking that we could do an entire executive education course on
right.
this, but I wanted to say I just spoke to a huge group of event planning strategists and professionals in Houston last month, and it struck me how deeply strategic that work is.
Yeah.
And, so the first thing I would say is I want you to drill down on the problems you solve for your company or your industry, right? And really taking the time to think about and quantify the impact you have. Always, negotiation starts with thinking about, what are the problems I want to solve, or what are the problems I'm already solving in the world? And how do I communicate that in a meaningful and tangible way so that I can advance the cause? First of all, to event professionals, I want to say I've seen you make a difference in people's lives over and over and over again. I know Seth has seen this too. And so I would tell you to do that, right? Quantify your value, first of all. Secondly, The advice I would give for folks in that role is the advice I would give almost anyone, which is you want to be asking as many open-ended questions as possible. If I'm an event planner, I think about within an organization, leadership of that organization might well be my client, my internal client. And so I'm approaching them thinking about what are the problems you guys want to solve with this conference? What do you need to make this super effective, right? To blow the doors off the thing. What are your concerns? What are some of the ways that things haven't gone well in the past? And how can we learn from those? On the flip side, I'd love to know, client, what was the last event you felt like was an 11 out of 10 and what made it that way? And so these are the types of questions. And, Seth, these are the questions that you and I ask clients when we work together because we know that when we solve their problems, that's when we're going to be most successful. And so
Yeah.
I would say the same thing for event planners within your organization. The more you can crawl inside the brain space of your internal client by asking those great questions, well, research shows the more good questions you ask, the more money you make, and also the better the relationships you have. And so you can't ask too many. That's where I would tell them to start.
It's a great point. I want to underscore asking questions. You say open ended questions. Very early in my work as a salesman, the person who was a mentor and trained me, avoid questions that just get a yes or a no until you're ready to ask for it, until you get the deal. Meaning, he was open ended. Is that the same thing as a facilitative question?
Yes, there are lots of ways you can describe this. It could be open-ended, it could be facilitative. That's kind of a big academic word. It could
Right.
be diagnostic, but let me just tell you how to do it, okay? You ask questions starting with what, how, and tell me. If your question starts with a form of to be or to do, will you be there at 3:30 today? Said, yes. Did you receive the report I sent over? Yes. If it's to be or to do, you've asked a closed-ended question. By contrast, what I want you to ask is, what was the last event you did that really worked and what made it work? How can we partner together to make this next event a success? Or better yet, my two magic words, I start every negotiation with these words. Tell me about yourselves. Tell me about your business. Tell me about you. Tell me about where you guys are looking to go, right? Tell me how we can partner together. Tell me is the biggest question you can ask. It gets you the most information, helps you make great deals.
I mean, if you're a salesperson, the ultimate goal is to, transact. But I kind of woke up to this, becoming more aware of it over the last few years. I won't say how many years that was, but it was quite a few where it's really about dialogue and
Yeah.
and generating a conversation and sustaining of that, the continuing of that. That's where the relationship, it's not linear either. I'm making it sound linear, but once that's kind of in play, or once that's in the ecosystem, that there's a connection, a relationship, and a trust, then a tell me gets an even richer response. And the engagement is even richer, the connecting is even richer, and the interaction is richer, where then I think you can get inside the brain space, as you're saying. And there's, once the lid is off, I often say, just pay attention to the world around you, and all the answers are there. And sometimes to get the answers, you just need to not take the whole lid off, just move it a little bit and let some space breathe out. And people will tell you everything that you need to know to be able to serve them and provide what they're looking for. So I think that that's my view of the open ended question. I don't know if that's too non academic.
No, not at all. I mean, people have, look, you've spent a lifetime connecting with folks. You have lots of, we were just talking before we got started about a long term client, right? Where you brought me in to do a keynote. You've had a long term relationship with this client. You don't get to a long term relationship with a client simply by transacting. That's about a relationship and that's about problem solving and that's about trust. I feel so fortunate that the approach I take to what some people might call sales or business development, for me, is forming incredibly cool, meaningful relationships with a variety of people where, yes, we do business together. And also, I know where their kids are looking for college. And also, I might know if they're doing an IVF cycle next month, or I might know if they have a parent who has dementia. And we connect on a variety of levels. And so I'm never out there faking it, right?
Yeah.
Part of negotiation is presenting yourself in such a way to the public that the people who are meant to work with you see that, come to you, right? Find you. And so you end up doing long term business with people who share your values, and you're just out there. Can I use some mild profanity, like
You
kicking ass
can.
in the
Hey,
world
look,
together,
we're
right?
from Jersey,
Jersey.
Alex. Let it rip.
I know, kicking ass is, like, as mild as it gets out here, right? And I was Brooklyn born, so watch out. That's how I feel about it. I mean, make no mistake, both of us sell, right? And I sell all day long, but it doesn't feel like something
Yeah.
that is transactional at all. I
Yeah.
deeply care about the people I work with. I want them to be super successful, and my goal is to help get them there.
That's such great stuff. Subscribers, reach into the comments, ask questions, share your experiences. This is just really, really great. One last kind of comment in this topic area, and then I want to get into your book. And it's a little bit personal.
Yeah,
We are redoing our kitchen. And this is the first home that we've ever owned. And we're really excited. We've lived it like you lived in Asia, we lived in Latin America, we've lived all over the world. And it's a big investment, and it's something that
yeah.
we've saved up for and we've thought about, and we've had plans, and then we've scrapped them and looked, and not, being enjoying it and really having fun with the whole creative process, and waiting till a moment where we could afford it. So we're there,
Mhm,
and we have what is the roof of what we want to spend. Of course, we'd like to spend less, but we kind of know where we were coming in at. And it was just so we did all our research. We went out, we looked at all the material, the countertops, and we had fun with it. It's a little not all fun. There were some spousal
yeah, mhm.
conversations, let's say, but it came out north of where we were. I said to the gentleman, I had no real pre-thought, Alex. I mean, I don't know how this fits into your book and your talk and the profession, the elite level work that you do. And I didn't want to come off as like overreaching or capricious or like greedy. But I just said, look, I told you at the beginning, this is where it was. I know it's just above there. We would like to stay at the roof of where we are, the top of our limit, and not make any modifications to the plan as it stands. So he's like, look, I need to talk to my boss and this and that, and not like BS, just like true. And I was like, of course, I can imagine. Like, I didn't expect you to be like, okay, no problem. So he comes back and he says, look, the way we can get there is we're going to modify this, this, and this. I just took like when I'm playing tennis, I just did some conscious breathing, express style. And I just said, you know, my heart was set on not being able to have to, do that modification, albeit it was minuscule, but, I held my line and I said, and this is really where we're at. And he said, let me ask. And like the next day, he's like, we're there. And he sent the invoice and we move forward. I don't feel like I was being a hard ass and I was a great negotiator. I was completely honest. Between me and you, if he had come back and said, I can't do it, I don't know what my next step was,
Yeah.
honestly. But that's where we were. My wife and I talked about it briefly. We didn't have this huge like anguish about it or everything. I don't know how does that fit into like what say you?
I mean, this to me sounds like you figured out what you needed in advance. You had a really clear budget and you were transparent about it.
Yeah.
And you expressed simultaneously, my hope was that we wouldn't have to sacrifice these things that we really have dreamed of and saved for. And also, we have this top line to our budget. So, how can you help? And from there, you give them the freedom to go back and say, okay, what do we need from this project, right? What is it going to take for us to be able to turn a profit, to pay all of our subcontractors and everything? And also, what might this project get for us in terms of future business? They might have taken into account who you are, how many people you know, right? The fact that we both have big mouths. I just did my kitchen, and one of the things I talked to them about was being able to promote the work, right, on my
Yeah.
social media and all
Yeah.
that. And that's value. So you talked about what you valued, you let them decide what they valued. I don't think that's, too hard ass at all. I think that's transparency, makes for great negotiation.
Thank you. I feel better. I mean, I didn't feel bad, but it helps when somebody outside, and especially a professional who's an expert in this area, puts language to it. The one thing I did extend was I said typically they wanted 50% down, and I said I was willing to give a much larger percentage down as an accommodation on my end, and the deposit's been paid. And so for me, I was going to pay it anyway, right? So now it's like kind of off the books, and it's good and it's exciting.
That
More
is
to be
creative
continued.
value.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So let's get to your book, Ask for More: 10 Questions to Negotiate Anything. What's one question, Alex, everyone should be asking themselves? And we may have already gone into this with the audit, but
Yep.
expound a little bit on us what you found from your experience, either surprisingly or that is just so obvious about your book and how it's resonated with everyone.
Yeah, we went into some of the questions already, but let me give you one question that I think everybody should ask themselves before they go in to negotiate. And especially if you've ever felt anxious or you've had some self doubt or a momentary lapse in your confidence, ask yourself, how have I handled something like this successfully before? Seth, too often we go into a negotiation thinking about the time we feel like we screwed something up, right? Or we did something wrong, or it didn't go the way we wanted. And what that does is it acts like a negative power prime on our brain, and it puts us back in a disempowered state to go in and negotiate. But when you think about and write down a time that you actually achieved success in something like this before, two things happen. Number one, the act of writing it down and going over that before you negotiate puts you back in that powerful space you were in. It's a positive power prime. And studies show that people who do this are more likely to negotiate successfully. But the second thing this question does is it gives you data, because Seth, it's going to tell you
Yeah.
what makes you a great negotiator. Maybe there's something about the way you relate to people that helps you in really difficult situations, and writing it down reminds you of something you can use. Somebody else might be the power of an introvert. I'm a super great listener and I take down heat in the room. And that could be a strategy that they would use for the future. So ask yourself how you've achieved a prior success before, write it down, and watch as you become a much more powerful, creative, and flexible negotiator.
That's great. I mean, this is why our viewers come to these podcasts for stuff like that. It's almost like you're accessing something in the past that was a source of success. And
Yeah, I think about it every time I get on stage.
yeah,
How have I done something successfully before? And it reminds me, especially times when I'm feeling like, do I really want to tell that personal story today? Or do I really want to put myself out there on the stage like that? It reminds me that part of my superpower is connecting with the audience on a
yeah.
deep level, even as I'm teaching about negotiation. And it reminds me to bring that.
And that's why, when we work together, I get such great feedback from my clients. And, I think that anybody out there who is in a role of hiring a speaker, and when I talk about you and advocate for you, I do address skills like negotiation, but it's a lot more than that. It's communication, it's leadership, it's listening, it's messaging, it's business. And, I think that we've covered a lot of that on this podcast. We're at the end of our road here for now. I just thank you so much for taking the time to be a guest with us. I know our listeners appreciate it. And just thank you so much, Alex, for being with us.
Well, and Seth, I want to thank you for being such a great partner to me. You know, you asked about my goals in the course of, working together for your client. And, so you're in the business of simultaneously helping people like me achieve what they want to do in the world, while also making your clients feel like they're going to have an absolutely knockout event. So congrats for all you do.
Well, thank you so much. And again, one last time, viewers, subscribers, thanks for joining in. Be sure to come for the next episode. You're going to be smarter for it. We'll see you next time.